Blake, how much would I have to pay you to drive through Alligator Alley at night?
Toby, you don't have enough lunch money for that.
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your co-host, Blake Hodges, a man who wouldn't drive through Alligator Alley for $10 million, and I'm here with my co-host who would be happy to take a late-night stroll down Alligator Alley, Toby Walters.
So I feel like we should give our listeners a little context. I guess if anybody knows Florida well, then they would know about Alligator Alley, but you and I just learned about Alligator Alley.
And I wish I never knew.
And so I guess it's in the southern portion of Florida, like through the Everglades. I just looked it up for
the
curiosity.
non-Disney part, the non-beach part, the wild animal part.
Where everything will kill you if you step out of your vehicle.
It's like Australia Light.
Yeah. I wonder if it'd be more likely that you would drive through Alligator Alley or if I would walk through Alligator Alley. More
likely I would drive through it. You're not. Would you really walk through it?
Why not?
Even if I gave you a handgun
during the day,
you would do it?
Yeah.
No. All right. I'm raising your life insurance policy.
I would need some sort of prize at the end of it. Now I think it's something like 80 miles, so it would take a long time.
What weapon do you take? It's America, so you can have any weapon.
I don't know how to kill alligators, but I would assume like a shotgun. Even though I've never fired a shotgun in my life.
I think you need a machine gun. What if there's multiple?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a gun guy, so I don't know the proper,
I'm buying
weapon.
2 machine guns on the company card now.
So, Blake, we went to Florida recently, and you had a first down there, didn't you?
I went to Disney for the first time.
So, you and your dad, Brian Deshawn.
I wish.
Now, if your father is listening to this episode, he's going to be like, son.
He's going to say, yeah, I wish too.
So we went to Exponential Conference, and that was really fun. We got to see some of our friends at First Baptist Orlando, and I think that was the biggest conference I've ever been to. 5,000 people there.
I just kept walking in the church, and there was more booths and more people.
Yeah.
And more booths and more people.
So as we're trying to, build connections, build awareness of church gear for church planters and smaller churches that need gear but don't have the budget for it. So that was kind of our first dip our toe into making those connections, and I thought it was a lot of fun.
I mean, I said X32 a couple times and Yamaha QL5, so I felt like a genius.
Yes, you did.
Because we were talking to pastors and executive pastors, so I was like, oh, I know more tech than them. This is great.
And I got the opportunity as well to go down to, I'll give it the OG Bayside. So, Blake, there are 2 Bayside churches, and they're on opposite ends of the country.
There's only one Bay in the Americas.
So, Bayside Community Church in Bradenton, Florida, and they were joking that they think, they said people will show up to Easter and Christmas with tickets from Bayside in California.
That's amazing.
I'm like, how do you get it that wrong?
And do they tell them, you think, or do they say, hey, welcome in, we're glad you're here?
I'm sure they welcome them in. I mean, maybe they correct them, maybe they don't.
I would say nothing. I'd say that's great.
And they were joking. They said, I think we even, the name confusion put us out on tour one time as Bayside Worship. And so then I thought to myself, dude, we should start like Rad Rocks Worship.
Okay,
and
I'm
see
down
if
for
we
this.
can go on tour as everybody thinks, oh, it's Red Rocks. But we're like, no, it's Rad Rocks.
There's a tambourine in the warehouse.
And so Bayside also they have a really big conference they do every year called Relate, and they bring in churches mostly from Florida and just, kind of love on them, pour into them, and kind of teach them the Bayside model. And they, over the last few years, have done a production breakout session. And so you figure it kind of like a church leader, a pastor's conference, there wouldn't be a lot of people at the production breakout session.
Well, because most of them got eaten on Alligator Alley.
That's true, on their way in. But there were 75 people in this room, and so they asked me to sit on a Q&A panel, and I was thinking, well, I hope you guys know something about tech, because I know nothing about tech. All I'm spouting out.
That's my job, Toby. You stay away from my job.
So it's as questions came up, if they were technical related, Josh and Nathan from Bayside, they were on it. Like they had all the technical information. But then when they would ask more like the soft skills, I would all of a sudden find myself spouting stuff from the Church Gear podcast. I'm like, oh, I remember hearing this from this guest, and let me share that idea with you. And oh, I remember this from this guest, let me share that idea with you. And it seemed to be pretty well received.
We're not the smartest cookies in the cookie jar, but what we figured out is you can source intelligence by just bringing on a bunch of guests.
Yes.
And we are now bringing in the source of our most intelligence, the most intelligent guest we've ever had, the three-peat himself, Mr. FILO, Todd Elliott. Todd, welcome to the Church Gear podcast again.
Thanks for having me on again.
Todd, just like everybody thinks the owner of Mike Rentals should be named Mike Reynolds, do people just assume your last name is FILO?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I haven't run into anybody that's I get a lot of Mr. FILO, but so maybe they do assume that's my name.
What is your middle name, Todd?
Oh, interesting question. My whole name is a great story, but Todd is my middle name.
Ah, wait, what's your first name then?
My first name is William.
Hang on.
That's
William
good.
Todd.
I'm going to make the same pitch to you that I did Stephen Aruda. You could legally change your name, William, to FILO, and you'd be FILO Todd Elliott.
There you go. And everybody still call you Todd, but you can show your ID.
This would be a good move.
Okay, I'll write that down.
He's not going to write it down.
No, I didn't see him move to grab a pen at all.
Writing.
He's got a pen
there
now.
you go.
Okay, so we're going to do a different spin on 5 Truths and a Lie because Todd has already come on here and whooped our butts in 5 Truths and a Lie before. We're going to do 5 Truths and a Lie about FILO staff.
Oh, okay.
Toby, I don't have good confidence on this one. I think they're going to get us.
I mean, Chelsea and Sarah are both very deceptive, so I think they can totally slip the lie past us.
Look at that adjective. I was going to say very smart.
They use their smarts to deceive us.
There we go. Number 1, we have watched all 3 seasons of Ted Lasso during lunch. That's true. I'm not saying that's a lie.
Okay.
Number 2, we have a spinning wheel to help us choose where to go to lunch every day.
We have a spinning wheel to choose Blake's punishment.
I think we should trade wheels for them, though. I think
Is that Wheel of Doom?
Well, theirs is Wheel of Lunch, and you love lunch.
But Blake, you think I would leave my lunch decisions up to chance every day?
Well, you would just put tacos here, tacos here, tacos here.
That's a good point.
Number 3, we have a paper tape dispenser called Tommy Liquor.
Tommy Liquor. I'm hoping that's true because I want the story.
I'm just glad that's not another musician I don't know the name of. Number 4, everyone on the staff team has a cat.
Oh, I feel so bad for them, Blake.
I'm picking that one as I'm holding that as my
Is
lie.
that why you think you have such an affinity for the FILO staff? Because they're cat people?
That would make sense. Number 5, the favorite treat is a Ghirardelli milk chocolate and caramel squares.
Did you just call Ghirardelli?
It gives you the GERD.
Man, you are straight up Tennessee boy.
Number 6, we work in a madman-style office straight from the 1960s.
Well, that's a little...
That's a hard one. If you're watching this, I
guess Blake doesn't know what Mad Men is.
I do know because people get mad at me for not watching it because I'm a marketing branding person. I'm locking in early. Everyone on staff having a cat, I do think they're cat people, but there's too many of them to all have a cat.
Okay, I'm going to go with number 1. I'm saying that they've watched all 3 seasons of Ted Lasso, but I'm going to just say they straight up doing it during work hours.
Dang it, Toby. That's a good rationale. All right.
I am brilliant.
We're locked in, Todd. Tell us the lie about the FILO staff team.
So the actual lie is that none of us have cats.
Ah, dang it.
And yeah.
Did you?
But I would say, to your point, Toby, the last season of Ted Lasso, those episodes were pretty long. And so we definitely dipped into work hours to get through those. Yeah.
So I'm going to take that point, Blake.
No, you're not. I'm the one who does the points.
I think you might be in cahoots with the FILO staff.
Well, I've been trying to work there for 3 years.
I know.
So.
I'm pretty sure if you ever leave Church Gear, I'm just going to look for you in Chicago with the FILO team.
That is accurate. Yeah.
You could just send an email to Blake@philo.org and see if you get a response.
That would be funny if you guys just set that up. And,
oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you can just email them at either one. So, Todd, we were recently in Florida, and Blake is always afraid of becoming Florida man because everything kills you in Florida. Is there any possibility of becoming Illinois man? Is that a thing? Like, what kills you in Illinois?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if there's a universal thing that kills you in Illinois, but I did, as I was thinking about it, last summer, somebody locally had a bison. I don't know if it was a pet bison or whatever. It got out.
Pet bison.
And it was roaming Lake County, which is nearby here. And yeah, they couldn't catch it. They couldn't find it. Yeah, it was just like a full-on buffalo, like a huge thing you'd see in Yellowstone, just waiting to gore someone in suburban Chicago.
Did they catch it?
They did eventually catch it,
If this is the South, someone would have went, I'm going to eat that bison, and they would have shot that thing under an
bison
hour.
burgers for lunch.
Yes.
Now, I'm thinking, what I would think would kill you in Chicago is those February winds.
that's no joke. Yeah, it's pretty windy here. Although this year, pretty mild.
Blake, you remember when we almost died in February in Chicago?
It's one of my most vivid memories of life.
When we got off the train, I don't remember what the stop was, but we accidentally got off on the wrong stop at 9:30 at night. And as soon as the train left, we turned around and there was nothing as far as the eye could see.
Yeah.
And we can cut this if this is weird to say, but that was the night I found out Brian Saganaro would rather die than cuddle for warmth in the snow.
Oh, we don't have to cut that. Yes. I said, okay, guys, how friendly are we willing to get here? And Brian said, look, I choose death. I will just walk into the tundra and accept my fate.
Brian said he'd walk into the snow as far as he could until he died.
Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, Todd. So I don't know if you feel this way. We feel this way, that you are very much looked to as a leader in the church tech community and somebody that people take the pulse of the community through, Todd licking his finger and holding up to the wind. So I like to think that the church tech community almost hit a low point coming out of COVID. There was somewhere in there where everybody was overworked, burnt out. They had left production altogether. They're out on tour. They're underpaid, whatever it may be. Do you feel like we're still in that valley of the shadow of death, or do you think we're, on the upswing, that we're making some progress as a community?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I have a great answer, but I feel like two things happened during COVID to people I was talking to. Overworked, absolutely. I mean, a newer version of overworked, something that was a new level compared to before COVID. I think everybody was overworked. But the second thing was that so many people I talked to were stuck in a room with their lead pastor, to create services. And suddenly the lead pastor is seeing, oh gosh, this is a lot of work, because they're in it, they're seeing it. And so I think, on some level, just the reality that, oh geez, these people are doing a lot of work for the church that usually goes unseen, that a few people I was talking to felt seen, overworked, but at least somebody sees what I'm doing. And I think it's interesting. It's one of the things that frustrates me about FILO, to be frank, is that I love that we encourage and inspire and, help people get more effective at what they do. And that you could attend FILO or go be a part of a cohort or something, I think can help, something FILO related can help develop you as a person. And the thing that's frustrating is that you can go back to your church and nothing changes. I mean, maybe you change, maybe you have, you're looking at your role a little differently, but the environment at your church, how people look at what you do and how they value what you do, that doesn't necessarily change. And I think trying to crack that code, how do we, what we do is unseen. It's behind the scenes. It's if nobody ever notices what we do, we've succeeded. But how do the people involved be seen? I think that's the thing that I've really been thinking about a lot is, how do we help churches create a different culture where not only tech people, but all the staff on some level are, seen and appreciated, not just for the thing they're doing, but for who they are, just as a person.
Yeah, you said a great thing about, the senior pastor suddenly being in a room with the production people and realizing what a big job this is. I wish, we had more of a voice to the community of pastors. And especially the church culture in which we live now. Pastors are looking at what other churches are doing through the lens of production. Yeah. Everything they're seeing is production. Yeah. Whereas before, they would talk to their pastor friends, they would go to conferences, they would sit together, have conversations, they might go visit other churches. But now everything's online, everything is over the top produced. They're looking at, Red Rocks and Elevation and some of these other churches that have a lot more resources than we know. And they're going back to their church and saying, let's do that. And the production people are like, there's two of us and you have 7 services on a weekend. And so
we have no money.
Yeah. Do you have any, thoughtful way of how we can get this message to senior pastors Do our listeners just need to share this episode with their lead pastor?
Yeah, maybe so. I had a conversation, this is going back a long time, with a worship leader who used to be on tour. You know, he was like a worship, he had songs that we all sing and that sort of thing. And we had a conversation once where he said, you know, the problem with production in the local church is that it's looked at as that we're entitled to it. You know, that every church is entitled to great production. And if you go out on the road or any other sort of corporate, any production in almost any other environment, like he was saying, I knew that more people came, you know, and more people would buy tickets to my shows if it sounded good. Mm-hmm. And so when I found somebody that made it sound good, I protected that person. I took care of that person. I made sure they were happy and well paid, and you know, that I didn't want to lose that person. Yeah. You know that good production isn't automatic, that you got to like keep the people that, you know, can get it done. And I think in the church they see that, you know, on social media, oh, they're doing cool stuff at Elevation, we deserve that too, and don't really understand that it's a lot of it's a people issue more than it is a gear thing or you know, more haze in the room.
Yeah. I feel like we haven't even noticed that a shift has happened, and maybe it's just me, but when I'm, you know, sitting on a Sunday morning at Church of the City, it's more important to me who's standing behind the sound console than who's on stage, because I know if my favorite guy is mixing, then it kind of doesn't matter who's on stage. It'll be good enough and it'll sound amazing because Josh is back there manning the ship. Do you think that shift has happened where, you know, I don't want to say production's more important than worship, but it's like it's equal footing now. We're on common ground.
Yeah. I mean, I think the real challenge is, there's so many challenges. I feel like consistency at front of house is one of the most difficult things to achieve, especially if you have a different mixer every weekend, you know, a volunteer or something like that. And so I think that we haven't really set those people up well to succeed. And so what ends up happening happened at my church way back in the day. Pretty soon I was mixing every weekend because that consistency, to your point, it didn't matter who was on stage. We knew it was going to sound like last week and the week before that and the week before that. And we weren't going to miss cues, and, you know, to your point too, good enough. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's so hard to train consistency in volunteers that it's, I think trying to do more from the platform becomes the knee-jerk reaction versus how do we really invest in these people and give them solid direction on what it should sound like and train to that purpose. But I think, you know, you probably fall into a category that's not normal. Probably Blake would say on many levels, but
my mom too.
My man Todd.
But, you know, I would say the average person probably doesn't look behind the soundboard and say, oh, it's Josh. They see, oh, it's my favorite worship leader leading this week. And I think, you know, excellent production on some level, once you get past a certain point, it's so subtle that I don't maybe know why it's so engaging, but it's because of 50 things the production team's doing. All I know is the person on the platform. That's the only frame of reference I have. So,
yeah, Blake, anyway. Where are we at with cloning Scott Ragsdale and Mike Smith? We were working on that, right? We're going to get every church a Scott Ragsdale or a Mike Smith or a, you know.
Toby, this is actually my fourth version of Todd. I don't know if you knew that yet.
You keep cloning him.
Yeah.
Where are the other three?
Well,
why isn't one here with us?
We had to destroy the machine when we realized it could clone more of you.
Oh. That is a dangerous, and it's like how you write into AI that it can't hurt humanity. Like, did you write into the cloning machine that it cannot clone Blake?
Well, then it's self-destructed.
It's like a universal law.
I'm going to throw something more crazy than that even out here. Is you guys were talking at the top of this of how do we make a pastor see how important production is, and y'all are now talking about consistency. Is it a crazy tactic to intentionally step out for a Sunday, go on vacation, let let the pastor see what happens when you're not there. Like maybe that's too reckless, but I'm throwing that out there as a possibility.
I mean, I love the idea of it. I think I'll just speak for me. I got myself to that place so many times. I'm just like, I'm just going to let this fail. And I don't think that's a healthy place to be necessarily. We should back up, a whole bunch to say, how are we defining excellence? What is an excellent service? Is it consistent audio? Or is it, we're developing somebody new. They made a couple of mistakes this week, but we're going to learn from them. And in the long run, this is going to be amazing. But instead of saying, no mistakes, distraction free every week, that's excellence. I think it's why you end up saying, how do we just get Scott Ragsdale mixing at every church on the weekend? It's because he's gone through all those things. He lived in an environment where he could learn and fail and get better. And he's the definition of the long game. But how do we do that with our volunteers? How do we create a culture where excellence is redefined as we're getting better every day instead of no mistakes?
Yeah. And part of the problem as well, Blake, is that, our listeners' goals is that when they step out, they have trained people to take over for them, that a perfect situation is the pastor doesn't even know that they're gone. It's kind of the nature of the production department being unseen, but and I think that's where having an advocate on staff is so important. So if your team is led by a creative arts pastor, for example, for that creative arts pastor to mention to the lead pastor, "Hey, did you know that Charlie was gone on Sunday?" "Oh, I had no idea." Mm-hmm. "Yeah, because he's trained his team so well that you didn't even know the difference." And then the senior pastor's like, "Oh, I got to give Charlie a fist bump next time I see him because I didn't even notice." Just having those advocates, I think, is super important.
That's a great point, because I think, like we've been saying, what we're doing is, if it's done well, it's invisible. And so, to leave and go on vacation and everything works great and nobody knows and you never say anything. And nobody knows all the work that went into training that volunteer so you could step away.
Yeah, Craig Rochelle, it was either him or Stephen Furtick on his podcast last week, said the way to know you're doing amazing at your job is to be taken for granted, because people just know you're always going to deliver. In my pettiness, I want to have it fall apart so you can see, but y'all probably give much better advice here on advocacy is better than letting it fall to pieces.
Right.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, Blake, are we about 6 months removed from our, salary talk?
Yep, and I hear that money is running through the streets, that all the church techs have been paid a fair living wage, and that everyone's...
Right down Alligator Alley.
That's right.
The pastor's like, if you can make it down Alligator Alley, I'll up your pay.
That's right.
It's like on the end of a fishing line, and then just like the money keeps getting further away from you.
So I visited a church very recently, and I was talking with their staff, and they said they got to use our series, and actually their HR department listened to the entire series, and then they
God bless them
about salary renegotiation. So most of the team got adjustments. One guy was like, "I got a pretty good adjustment, so thank you very much." And then the lead production director was like, "Yeah, so it worked a little bit backwards for me. They came back and said, apparently you're a little overpaid, but we're going to let you keep it." So that was a good running joke in their department.
Yeah. Oh man.
That's my nightmare. That's my nightmare that we could have done that.
Todd, we had some great people on the series. A lot of your friends, Caleb Lepke and Matt Wright. Give us some of your perspective on the salary discussion in the church. Where are we at? Are we like grossly underpaid as a community, or do you think we're starting to get the awareness that is necessary and maybe we're moving in the right direction as a whole?
Yeah, I guess I would love to believe we're moving in the right direction. Part of it, I've been doing church production for so long that there were so few people doing it when I started that there was no benchmark. And I think then you fast forward to now, we've or maybe pre-COVID, it's still an experiment. Like, what is a production person in the local church? How much do we pay them? What do they actually do? What do we want them to do? What do we need them to do? And I think, it's changing now to, we understand a little bit more. It's not, we don't just We don't maybe just need somebody who knows the gear, but we need somebody that understands enough about the gear, but is about people, that's who we're looking for. And I think, I think doing production, it's expensive. You look at the gear, it's expensive. You look at, then hiring people to kind of manage it all. It's not cheap. And I think, the church is realizing and even compared to when I started versus now, you can't do church without production. You definitely can't do a live stream, but even just a pastor getting up, on a microphone requires a lot that, back in my day, it wasn't
before Blake
there
was
weren't so
born.
many churches doing it. Yeah. And so, it was a little bit unclear what exactly do we need from this role. But, I think some of it goes back to that idea of, that we deserve great production, isn't true. It's, you have to cultivate good production, and you do that by, retaining your people, good people, and paying them well. So maybe, have your pastor listen to this podcast.
Todd, I'm going to ask you an impossible question. But the thing that kept coming up in the Pay series was, how do you communicate this to your pastor? You can't just send him the PDF on his desk. I mean, maybe you can. Right. That'd probably be tough. Like, what advice would you give the text that they heard the series, they've been marinating on it, but they're like, they don't know how to start the conversation or engage with it? I mean, they don't have the boldness. I tell Toby every 2 days I need more money, and he just, ups my Venmo account, so it's great. But for people not in that situation, how would you advise starting that conversation?
Yeah, I think when I think back on my own journey through, getting paid what felt like the right amount, is that I needed to be willing to have the conversation, to be bold enough to talk about it. The other part of it was I needed to be really sure that I was being responsible with what I had, so that I know on some level it shouldn't matter. They can't base the church can't base how much they're paying you based on all kinds of factors. But I thought I need to be able to say, hey, I'm working a budget at home. I'm being very careful with my money. I'm willing to even show it to you if that would be, that would help this conversation. But I think even with, so that's one part of the being responsible. The other was, with the job you've given me, how am I doing? Am I crushing it? And letting that speak, because it doesn't matter if I'm underpaid, but I'm underperforming, like, no one's going to listen to me. And so to make sure that, okay, with what I have, with the tools that have been provided, I'm doing amazing work. And so those two things I guess that's three things, like being responsible with the money that you're paying me, being responsible for the responsibilities that you've given me on the job, and being bold enough to have the conversation. And I think, on one hand, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'll say it anyway. I feel like I went into all those conversations feeling like, if they fire me for having this conversation, then I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is, if somebody's going to actually fire you for bringing up this topic, then maybe you don't want to work there anyway. It's like, if they're unwilling to have the hard conversation, I think, so we should all be less scared of being fired.
Yeah, I think to that exact point, as a business owner now, if anybody, and we'll talk about Blake, I never him as an example. If you come to me with actual well thought out. Why are you holding your hands open? You're just like coming like a pauper. Please, more money, please. But I would never fire that person for having a conversation about salary unless I was wanting to fire that person anyways. Unless I was thinking, you know what, this is a good time to talk about, like, your performance here has not been stellar, and so thank you for bringing this up. So if you're doing a terrible job and you know it, or you really suspect it, don't go have the salary conversation without having a conversation with somebody else you trust. Like, go to your creative pastor, go to whoever's not your direct report, and just say, hey, what's the pulse on how I'm doing here? But I think for most of our checks, they're crushing it. They're doing a great job. And so just, have that confidence, knowing you're not going to be fired. That would suck.
Right. I think part of it from a production standpoint, it comes down to back to the idea of being unseen and unnoticed, that the only conversations we're having with leaders is usually like, how could you let that fail? Or why didn't that work? And so I can understand why it feels like there's a culture of negativity and like they might fire me. And I think for me, this is a big leadership conundrum that, if your people are scared to talk to you, then you're not leading them well. There's something.
Yeah.
And I say it a lot that I think in church I think it's always great to be improving and trying to solve problems and get better. But I think that leads to a culture of critique and negativity and how come this isn't better, instead of look at all the things that are going well and let's talk about them. And so anyway, that's a little off topic, but I think again, if you're afraid to talk to somebody, that should tell you a little bit about like the culture there, and you should be willing to step into it anyway.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring back out my soapbox. Do I get a soapbox this episode, Blake?
I smell it, so you might as well bring it out. It doesn't smell like soap. I'd call it a different kind of box, like an outhouse, but
a butt box.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
So just the importance of having an advocate. So, our mission is church techs deserve an advocate. And like you're saying, Todd, that I was a church tech when I was a teenager, and I only heard about what I did wrong. And as soon as I became a worship guy, I heard about my good stuff all the time. And so for building an advocate into your church staff to, whether it's maybe it's the worship pastor, maybe it's the creative arts pastor, whoever it is, to just gently nudge whoever's in charge and be like, hey, just so you know, like the production team worked 90 hours to get that new set up this week. Or, that LED wall was a beast to put up and they crushed it. Like, just a reminder, like, give them props, And I think it's fair enough to say, a lead pastor, his mind is not set to see what you do behind the scenes. Whether that's right or wrong, that's just the reality. He's focused on different reality, things. And it's very difficult for the production guy to go to the lead pastor and say, like, hey, I worked 90 hours this week. Can I have more money? Like, that's a very uncomfortable conversation.
Right.
But when somebody else who stands in that path goes to the lead pastor and says, hey, Joe worked 90 hours this week, like, give him some props. Like, those are important things to have in place.
Even for the people listening, to your point, I think even as a tech person leading a team, to even say to the lead pastor, hey, this volunteer is crushing it. Can you just say something? Can you just walk over there and say something?
Yeah.
I think even you could be an advocate for your team, but I'm with you, to have somebody else who's in your corner on staff that notices what you're doing. Yeah. So key.
Yeah. And I think that's universal. It doesn't matter how big your church is. If you're a 40,000 person church or a 40 person church, like, for a volunteer to have the lead pastor come up and say, like, hey, dude, you're doing a great job. That's huge.
And I think just to kind of underline your point, I think a lead pastor, they're wired up so differently than a tech person. And so their minds are somewhere else entirely.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're there. We're there to kind of crush these things and make them, disappear. And so it would make sense that the only time the pastor's noticing is when everybody's noticing that something's not working. And so, as a leader of a team, I think it does the senior pastor a service to point out those things that the team is doing well. Because otherwise, they just, without knowing it, they become kind of this bully to the team that we can never please him.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, I don't know that anybody would say this, they're pleased 80% of the time. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
They're never saying anything about it. They're disappointed 20% of the time. And that's the only time we interact with them.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, if you reverse that, as a leader, you take the bad as well. You take it upon yourself. So if volunteer Sarah did not get the slide cue right during the sermon, you own that yourself. You say,
absolutely,
hey, man, that was on me. I will, I'll make sure the team knows the importance of getting those slide cues right, but that's on me. Just taking that hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Leadership, Blake, it's not for the faint of heart, man.
I'm just imagining all the
geez.
hits that my boss has been taking for me to you then. I mean, that just, my goodness.
Why did the warehouse burn down last week? Look, Toby, that one's on me.
Because the insurance payout was better than the value of the gear. I've been saying this for years. We should cut that. No, just to summarize what y'all are saying, though, because this was an answer I looked for in the whole time we did the pay series. I think this is really good of find your advocate, and then I'd add just supply them with information. Like I send my boss a monthly list of just, here's a couple things that I'm proud of this month. Like supply them with information and let them advocate for you. I really like this. Let's shift from pay, as awkward as pay can be, to something more fun. The biggest needs in church production right now. That's not, difficult like pay, Toby, right?
I'm just thinking of I have a song stuck in my head, and you probably never heard it before, Blake, but what the church world needs now is tech, sweet tech. You know that song, Tad.
I do.
Yeah.
You just call him
Love,
Tad.
sweet love. Yeah.
It was a little bit of a tad.
Wait a minute.
I just got back from New Orleans, so I have a little bit of that southern drawl.
Is that a real song?
That's funny.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love. That's a real song.
Okay. I thought you meant the actual lyrics. We
Yeah.
are bunny trailing beyond.
I'm fresh off of vacation, Blake.
You know
I'm
what?
Just and also this is kind of the first day of spring. It's gonna be 80 degrees today. I'm in my shorts
Ooh.
and flip flops, so I'm totally in like relax mode.
I don't know about you, Todd, but I'm enjoying the train wreck. So I'm going to have you ask the question now instead of me. Toby, take it from here.
Okay, as Mr. FILO himself, do you have a specific thing that you feel like the church tech community is, needs in this moment, or do you have like a top three, and this might lead right into FILO of
I
this
think
year what we're focused on.
Yeah.
A very ethereal question we're hitting you with.
Right.
It could just be more money, please. Less work, more leadership skills, whatever.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier, this idea of redefining excellence. I think it's so easy, I think, especially in the church production world, doom scrolling on Instagram, seeing all the amazing things people are doing and trying to then copy that at our location and, think that anything less is a failure. I think that there's everything about being true to your church and what God's called your church to be about. And it's not all about what Elevation's doing or Red Rocks or Transformation or whoever. It's about what is the expression of God in your local church, and how does that translate into production? I think one of the things that I used to do a lot as a production person, and I see it done a lot, this is kind of where we get into trouble, is that we don't have a lot of actual direction from our leadership on what exactly it should sound like or look like.
Yeah.
And so without a whole lot of direction, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to blow this sucker up big time, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to melt your face.
Yep.
And I think that's not what God's calling us to do. And so, for us as the tech people to ask the question, like, what do we want it to sound like? What do we want it to look like? How do we want to use these tools in an authentic way at our church? And I think it takes a responsibility for us to ask the question, because I think what ends up happening is we're melting faces, and the leadership is like, what's going on here? But I don't understand it enough to enter into it. So I guess this is just what it has to be. And on some level too, they're hoping that it looks like Red Rocks and Elevation and all that.
Yeah.
By the way, this is not a sponsored podcast by Elevate and Red Rocks. But I think on some level, our leaders abdicate a little bit of their visionary authority to step in and say, this is what it should be. Without that, I think we get into trouble. And so as a tech person, I think it's our responsibility to ask, like, what do we actually want this to look like? Let's work on this together. And then, maybe the even harder part is to let go of your dreams of melting off the faces of the congregation, that you're willing to say, hey, you know what? This week, we're not going to use haze at all, because that's what we feel like is the right step. well, they can't do lights without it. I'm like, yeah, try it and see what happens. And okay, maybe I got a text message from an old friend. Hey, how loud should it be, in a church service? And I'm like, frankly, it should be appropriately loud.
Yeah.
And I think we get into unappropriately places all the time with production because we don't have somebody that's saying this is appropriate. This is what our appropriate looks like. And so on the volume conversation, I had a lot of people telling me it can't be over 95, let's say.
Yeah.
And I was in an event where I was mixing, and the main speaker is like whipping the crowd up into a frenzy right before worship, and the crowd's at 105.
Yeah.
And so if you're telling me to have the worship band come in at 95, I can do that. It feels exactly wrong. They need to be 110. And so I need to get there. And so anyway, I've sort of gone off on a tangent here, but I think it's up to us to ask the questions like, what are we trying to do, and how does production best serve that?
Blake, real quick trivia for you as a young, don't know anything about the pop culture history. Is one of the main reasons the Beatles stopped touring is because nobody could hear them over the crowd.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they just got so frustrated with not even being able to hear themselves. They're like, what's the point? Let's just make records.
Gracious, those Beatles flew off. Well, Todd, I really love your answer, man, because it sounds like what is the most needed thing in the tech community is a definition of a successful Sunday. It's not my assumption. It's not the thing I saw on Instagram. To your point, like, what is our cumulative leadership plus tech team definition of a successful Sunday? I really like that.
Yeah.
I don't know who says this, but there's some
Todd
leadership.
Elliott.
Okay. There's some leadership guru that says, like, if you and your team don't have an agreed upon definition of success at the beginning, you don't know if you hit it or not.
Sure. What's a win look like?
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, fight for that definition with your leadership.
And again, don't look at what other churches are doing and point at that and say, that's a win. No, you're in a different context. Like, figure out what a win is for your context.
Yeah. And I think it's also important in that win conversation, like, this is what we realistically can do with the people we have. And so if we want something different, let's talk about how we're going to get there. But as part of, like, what does success look like, given the factors of who's on our team and how new are the volunteers and all those things, that's up to us to represent in those conversations.
I really like that. And, that's some good wisdom from Todd. And we'll have some more good wisdom from Todd at FILO 2024. So let's talk about FILO. Tell us about this year's biggest conference in church production, the best conference in church production.
I know. This is my favorite.
It's both of our
2
favorite
days of the entire year. It's so much fun. And at the end, I basically want to, like, sleep for the rest of the year.
Because you're so tired because you had such a good time.
Exhausted.
Well, to be fair, that's not a FILO problem. That's a Grandpa Toby problem. I was dragging his dead corpse through like 4 days of exponential because it was 4 days instead of 2.
Yeah,
that was
rough.
What is it? I looked at you at the end of day 1. I said, "Where are you at?" And you said 30%. I was like, "That's not going to be enough."
Yeah, and then you said, "Okay, 1 to 10, where are you at?" And I think I said like -12.
That was on day 2. Okay, so
oh man,
Todd,
well, I feel very similar in that I have like mixed emotions when FILO is over. I want to do another day of it, or just can we just repeat this? And then on the very opposite extreme, I want to just fall over and sleep for days. So this year is going to be great. March. It's in May 7th and 8th at Willow Creek, South Barrington. So we're there again. We've added some more breakouts. So we've added an advanced breakout track. So all the topics are about things that maybe we're not even doing or very few people are doing, like AI and some of those other things. So we're talking about kind of what's on the forefront of what we have going. So I'm excited about that. And then the other one is basics. So just like 101 level everything. Yeah. So
do you have an idiot track for Blake and I?
We'll add that one. We'll just have a special room for you all to sit in. Yeah. No. All right. So we have a lot of great main session speakers this year, a really interesting combination that we've never had before. So we have Eugene Cho, who used to be a senior pastor at his church, and he was teaching pastor for a long time at Willow Creek. Love just what he's going to bring. We have Whit George, who's the lead pastor at Church on the Move, and also used to be the creative director there. And actually, before FILO, we had an event called Gurus of Tech, and he and Andrew Stone came together. I got to interview them there, so I'm excited to have him back.
Yeah.
Just that perspective of being a senior leader, but coming from kind of where we all live.
Yeah.
We got Trey McKnight, who was a worship leader at North Point for a bunch of years, and now is an executive coach. And I just did a podcast recording with him, and I could have asked questions all day long. I just loved his perspective, and he was a firefighter. And so I had a lot of questions about that, like driving a fire truck sounds like something so awesome. But anyway, I'm excited to have him join us. And then Alex Seeley, who's the lead pastor at Belong & Co.
Yeah.
And so she's coming from kind of this whole like touring environment and starting a church for people that are busy on tour. And so like, how do we create a space for them? And so it was band people, it was production people. And so, that's a big part of her heart. And so, I'm excited to have all of them here. And, it's interesting doing an event. I think a lot of us can relate to like Christmas and Easter. Like every year you're, okay, how do we do kind of the same thing, but, make it better, but not just like melt faces for the sake of melting faces. And so, I feel like we work really hard to make sure we're not just blowing it up to blow it up, but to be intentional about what we're doing. And so, I just feel like who the main session speakers are, what we're doing in the main sessions, what the breakouts are. I feel great about just kind of what we're offering people. So if you've been before, it's going to feel similar, but totally different.
Yeah.
And if you've never been, hopefully it's a huge injection of kind of renewed hope and some encouragement, and being able to leave feeling like, oh, I learned something and I'm going to go back and be different at my church.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I see so many posts online of saying, okay, I've been to FILO. What conference should I go to this year? And I'm just, every time I'm trying to hold back, like, go back to FILO, you idiot.
FILO.
Like, there are some great conferences out there, but as far as the church tech community, if you want to take your team to a conference, like, and it's the Super Bowl of the church tech conferences, like FILO's it. And it is such a good time. And there is so much happening in 2 days that it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, me and Toby don't agree on much. We fight all the time on this podcast, but about queso,
about whether
tacos.
you actually work here.
Well, that's pretty clear. But one of the things we always agree on is FILO is our favorite time of year. So if you're looking at a conference this year, you should be attending FILO with us.
Yeah.
And I have to say, just from my perspective, like hearing you guys say it's like the top, premier event, church tech conference, it's weird. It sounds strange to me because it's, I don't know. On one hand, it feels very startup-y still. And so much of it is just like, I need this. And so this is the event we're producing. And so it's not like I don't think we're out to, I don't think our goal is to have like the best, biggest, greatest conference event. But the goal is that, we all leave becoming more effective. That's the goal. And I even feel it for me too. Just like, the goal isn't just to have this huge thing that's cool, but that it's actually doing good in the world. So
FILO 2024, not melting faces, refilling your heart. Okay, so I thought, today we could do some trivia about conferences since we were talking about conferences.
Ooh, okay.
So this is conference trivia. I've got 5 questions.
Okay.
Who's going to win conference trivia between the two of you?
Are there any vintage baseball card conference trivia here? Because that's where I went as a kid. Those were the only conferences I ever went to as a kid.
You were like into vintage baseball, like cards?
I mean, I was huge into baseball cards when I was, 8 to 12 years old. That was that and skateboarding. I was all about it.
I think, were you like selling the cards?
Well, it's buy, sell, trade. Like I was never, I never had a booth at one of these things. I was always going to look for cards.
I think Gary Vee and Mark Cuban both got into business that same way. So maybe instead of going to college, send your kid to baseball trading card camp.
Yeah, you kind of learn some of those business skills.
All right, number 1. And I think to be fair here, we need to read through all 4 before someone guesses. Just
Okay.
We don't shout it out. You know, we typically do a shout out.
Look, you're the game master on this one.
I would like everyone to get a chance to hear them.
Okay.
Number 1, which of these conferences isn't real? Number 1, the Association of Lincoln Presenters.
Wow.
Lincoln like the president. Number 2, the Big Orange Fish Conference. Number 3, the Redhead Day Conference. Number 4, Paper Dolls Convention. So you're looking for the one that's not real.
Okay.
Either the Lincoln Presenters, the Big Orange Fish Conference, the Redhead Day Conference, or the Paper Dolls Convention.
I'll just say Redhead Day Conference.
Okay,
When
Todd.
I'm going to go
doubt,
Big
choose
Orange
C.
Fish.
The Big Orange Fish Conference is not real.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
This thing is rigged already. I can sense it.
What's funny is I was trying to make stuff up, and
Yeah.
I was like, what about the Big Blue Fish Conference? And it kind of maybe existed, so I had to change the color. All right, the winner gets me. So,
Weird.
Oh, well, I'm
hang
going
on.
to...
The winner gets to decide where I go. How about that? Because then you would just throw the...
Yeah.
All right, tied up. Number 2, what's the biggest conference every year? Number 1, the Disney D23 conference. Number 2, the Consumer Electronics Show. Number 3, the Clown Convention. Number 4, the Plumbers of America Palooza.
And so it's not in there. I was going to think like, the Republican National, the Democratic National Convention, but apparently there are bigger things out there.
I think those are mostly hyped up well on TV. I don't know that
Probably.
they're, yeah.
I'm going to go with the Plumbers Bonanza. The
Plumbers Palooza? Okay. Todd, what are you going
I'm
to
going to
go as the biggest?
go CES, the Consumer Electronics.
How did you get that?
Seriously? You guys are totally cheating. You
No.
gave Chelsea the answers ahead of time.
I once was doing an event in Las Vegas, and it was like the last day of CES or the first someday, and my ticket price, like one direction, was like $1,500.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what is going on? And it's because, it's such a huge show. They're just jacking all the prices. Anyway,
At that point, you just stay in Vegas another day, right? I mean, the cost to leave.
I guess.
Okay,
Right,
since it's
yeah.
2-0, Todd, I want to give Toby the first chance to guess this next one. Because
I've had the first chance to guess the first two ones. It's not going well for me.
this is true or false. True or false,
Okay.
there is a conference called BronyCon for guys who love My Little Pony in Baltimore every year, and it has an annual attendance of 10,000 people.
I'm going to say false.
Okay, Todd, you gonna
I'm
stick?
saying true. I'm saying true.
It's true.
Oh my gosh. Once you said 10,000 people, I was like, that can't be true anymore.
I was Googling this stuff, and I was like, my job is weird.
The only reason I know that is because I have, 20 somethings children that like keep me abreast of like weird stuff like
Sure, Todd.
bronies. Yeah.
Not like we can't see your My Little Ponies on the shelves behind you.
All right, just playing for fun now. Number 4, true or false?
Because I've already lost. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe.
Or maybe this is for everything. Whoever gets this
Oh, there you go.
wins the whole
we
thing.
got 2 left. So
Okay.
breakout sessions at conferences weren't invented until 1977 when the Hasbro conference tried to brainstorm new toy building brainstorming sessions.
False. I got to get one of these right.
I'm going false too.
It was false.
Okay. Do I get the point because I said it first?
You know what? It's called a pity point.
Thank you.
Number 5.
Consolation point.
This is from thinkbusinessevents.com. They had tips on how to prepare for your first conference. What was not one of their suggestions?
See, this is unfair because we both own a business, but only one of us has a business that is a conference.
Wait a minute, Toby, are you telling me it's unfair when your co-host makes a game that's rigged against you? That doesn't feel good?
Only when you do it to me.
Look, the B host finally had to come back for the A host. All right, you're looking for the thing they don't advise you to do.
Okay.
Number 1, it is advisable to never go to a conference alone. Number 2, check for a cloakroom ahead of time. You might not know if they have a place for your cloak. Number 3, bring a notepad or iPad. Number 4, while some conferences might like the shout out, be sure to check that people don't mind being posted at the conference on social media.
When in doubt, choose C.
Okay, so you're taking bring a notepad or
Yep.
iPad. That's
Yep.
a terrible guess. All right, Todd, what do you think they did not advise?
I'm thinking that if you have a suggestion that involves an iPad, that you wouldn't use the word cloak. So I'm going to go with the cloakroom.
Dude, that was the one that blew me away. They talked about the cloakroom as their first thing.
I just, honestly, I doubted that you were clever enough to come up with the cloakroom as the lie.
That's pretty good. The lie was they didn't advise not to go to a conference by yourself.
Oh.
I hate going to conferences by myself.
Oh my gosh.
I need a wingman, so to speak. If I'm going to start conversations with strangers, I need someone to play off of. The whole him, have you met Ted?
Wait a minute.
Have you met Todd?
Do I only exist because you need a wingman?
Yes.
Okay. Todd.
I'll be your wingman sometime. Just give me a call.
Thank you.
Wait, no.
Yeah.
For
Wait,
me.
who was he saying that to?
Yeah, I'm going to say
either one. Either one of you.
Great.
I'd do it.
Will you be our wingman at FILO? You don't have anything going on those days, do you?
Oh, yeah. That might be a stretch. Yeah.
That might be a tough time for Todd. Okay, well, Todd has won conference trivia. Todd, do you have a tech takeaway for us?
Well, wait. What do you
know?
He needs to decide where you end up.
Oh,
Are
don't
you
put that
taking Blake
pressure
or are
on
you
him.
rejecting?
Yeah, the winner gets to decide if they, I guess, where I go.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Decisions.
No.
Yeah. I think you're good where you are for now. We'll keep you there.
Dang it. Fine. Okay. Well, Todd, now that you've broken my heart, we're going to end this episode on a tech takeaway. So we've talked a lot. We've kind of treated you as the grand poobah of church production, and you handled our questions very well. I appreciate you taking on all this ephemeral talk. So what would you kind of end us on as a tech takeaway to people, other than obviously get your FILO tickets?
Yeah, get your FILO tickets. I would say so much of, I think for all of us that are wherever we are, for you guys, for me, if you're a tech person in a local church, I think there's a lot of good that's just right there in front of us that we have control over. We have choices. We can, we're not just, we don't have to just live our lives responding to everything, but the tools for a great experience are right in front of us. And so, the whole idea of what gear do you have? What volunteers do you have? How could you do what you're doing better, more effectively? I think all those are within our own control. We don't have to wait for somebody else to do those things. And so, that we talked a lot about how do we advocate for ourselves to our senior leaders. I think that's important, but I think that can't be the first step. The first step needs to be looking at me and what am I doing? What am I spending my time on? And what resources do I need? And how do I get better at all those things? And take what I have and maximize it. I think developing ourselves is one of those leadership things that maybe gets talked about a little more than it used to, but I think self-leadership and learning how to lead ourselves is, really the next step for, I think, a lot of us. So
leading ourselves, Toby, that sounds hard.
I don't like that.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to lead.
Just somebody tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I might need some training on leading myself. So as we wrap up here, Todd, if I was going to get some training on leading myself, I'd probably go to FILO. So where do you get your tickets? Like, how does that go? Where should people go, search to secure this good time for themselves in May? And also, I just want to say, Todd didn't pay to be on here. We just love FILO.
We almost have to pay Todd because we love him so much.
You can't pay to be on the podcast. We think FILO's great.
Thank you. So you can go to philo.org to get your tickets. I think it might be /events, but you can find it real easy there. I would also put in a plug for the FILO cohort. So just an opportunity, speaking of self-leadership, to invest in yourself, to be in a small group with other tech people from churches around the country and the world who are kind of living the same life with the same challenges, and a chance to just be encouraged by people who get you. So you can go to philo.org/coaching. We'll get you to kind of when the next one of those is about to happen.
Nice. I love that. I think community is a thing that we need more of in the church tech community. So that's a good way to get it. Todd, thanks for coming on, man. Can't wait to see you in person
thanks for having me. Yeah, it's coming up. Can't wait.
Be here before you know it. FILO 2024.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
So, Blake, what is Dak Prescott's cadence when he wants his team to hike the ball?
All right, here we go.
Now, you don't know this because of like they hike the ball and the crowd noise, but he says, "Here we go," and then as soon as they hike the ball, he says, "To FILO." You can't hear it on TV.
Yes, and if you are ready to say that to a friend, text them this episode and say, "Hey, here we go. Let's go to FILO."
Yes, and there is a better than 0% chance that Dak Prescott will be at FILO.